This is the podcast to improve your English listening skills while learning something new in English. Every episode, we bring you interesting topics in simple and clear English, so you can listen, learn, and grow. So, sit back, relax, and let's get started.
Okay, so we've got some really interesting stuff to look at today, all about hobbies and interests, but specifically how you can use them to improve your English speaking skills.
Yeah, everyone has things they're passionate about, right? And this is all about tapping into that to make learning English more engaging and effective.
And we've got a pretty good mix of stuff here. Vocabulary list, ways to talk about what you enjoy. Even some sample conversations and self-introductions, all focused on hobbies. It's like a toolkit for using your interests to boost your English.
That's a great way to put it. A toolkit. And our goal today is to unpack this toolkit together, see how all these different pieces can work together.
Yeah, and maybe uncover a few surprises along the way.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
We want to show you that talking about your hobbies isn't just a fun way to pass the time. It can actually be a really powerful way to improve your fluency, build your vocabulary, and just feel more comfortable speaking English.
So looking at the material, one of the first things that jumps out is the way it breaks down different categories of hobbies.
Right. And I think this categorization is really interesting because it kind of reflects these fundamental areas of human interest. We've got the art and creative side, things like drawing, painting, photography, acting, playing guitar.
Right.
Then there's sports and physical activities. You've got your football, basketball, going to the gym, jogging, music and entertainment. That's listening to music, singing, watching movies. Then you have reading and writing, covering books, obviously writing itself, and newspapers. And then there's this kind of broader other category.
Like a catch-all.
Yeah, exactly. With things like traveling, cooking, playing chess. So it's a really nice overview of the kinds of things people are generally drawn to.
It is, and it makes you think. When you're learning English, wouldn't it be so much better to focus on the words and phrases related to the stuff you're already into?
Oh, absolutely.
Rather than just trying to memorize random lists of vocabulary.
100%. I mean, if you're passionate about photography, for example, you're naturally going to be more motivated to learn words like aperture or composition.
Right, you have a reason to learn them.
Exactly. You're not just learning a word in isolation. It's connected to something you actually care about.
Yeah.
And that makes a huge difference in how easily you remember it.
You're not just memorizing, you're actually using it.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes more meaningful, and that's really what helps the vocabulary stick.
So you've got this kind of personal vocabulary building happening through your hobbies. But then how do you actually start talking about these things naturally?
Yeah.
The material gives us some really useful phrases for expressing our interests.
Right, and this is where we start to see some of the nuances of the English language. We have phrases like, I like, I enjoy, my hobby is, I'm interested in, I love.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to say it.
Right. And they all express some level of positive feeling towards an activity, but they definitely don't all have the same intensity. I love clearly conveys a much stronger passion than I like, which might just indicate a mild preference.
It's like saying you're happy versus ecstatic.
Exactly. You're picking the right tool for the job. And using that stronger language when you really want to emphasize your enthusiasm.
And I imagine that using a variety of these phrases is also important for just sounding more natural and less robotic when you speak English.
Absolutely. You don't want to just default to I like for everything. Varying your sentence structure adds a natural flow and depth to your speech. Like, you might start by saying, I like to cook, But then you could elaborate with, I really enjoy experimenting with new recipes, or my real hobby is actually baking sourdough bread.
I like that. So each phrase kind of adds a different layer to the picture.
Exactly. You're painting a more complete picture of your interest.
So let's actually see how these phrases work in a real conversation. The material provides an example dialogue that's really helpful for visualizing this.
And what I like about this example is how simple and effective it is. It starts with this very common, open-ended question. What do you like to do in your free time?
It's such a natural way to start a conversation about hobbies. It's easy to answer. Everyone has something to say.
Right. It's not intimidating. And then the back and forth in the dialogue feels so natural and effortless.
Yeah, it just flows. One person mentions listening to music and playing guitar, and then almost immediately flips it around with, how about you?
That's so important. That little phrase, how about you, keeps the conversation moving. It creates a real exchange rather than just one person talking at the other.
And then when the first person mentions reading novels and watching movies, the other person asks, what kind of music do you like?
Right, showing that they're actually listening and interested in learning more.
Which then leads to more sharing, talking about specific types of music, even expressing a desire to learn something new with that, I'd love to learn how to play the piano comment.
Exactly. And it shows how a simple question about hobbies can lead to unexpected connections and shared interests.
It's a really nice example.
And from a language learning perspective, it's a relatively low pressure way to practice speaking English. You're talking about something you enjoy, which can help you feel more comfortable and less self-conscious about making mistakes.
Yeah, you're less worried about being perfect. You just want to share your passion.
Exactly. That desire to communicate can really help overcome any anxiety you might have about speaking.
So we've talked about starting a conversation, but what about when you're meeting someone for the first time? You want to give them a quick glimpse into who you are. The material gives some examples of how to incorporate your hobbies into your self-introduction.
Right, and we see both a short version and a longer version, each serving a slightly different purpose. The short introduction quickly mentions a few key interests. Reading, watching movies, traveling, trying new foods. It's a very efficient way to just give someone a snapshot of your personality.
Yeah, like those are the things that make you you.
Exactly. And I think what works well is that those are all fairly common hobbies, so there's a good chance the person you're meeting will share at least one of those interests.
Right, which makes it easier to connect.
Exactly. It increases the likelihood of finding that common ground and having something to talk about. Now, the longer introduction goes into a bit more detail. Mentions where he's from a specific sport, he likes football, and even his preferred genres of music, pop, and jazz.
So with the longer version, you get a much clearer picture of his personality, what he's truly passionate about.
And I love how he wraps it up with that open-ended question, how about you? What are your hobbies? It's such a natural way to invite the other person to share their own interests.
It turns it into a two-way conversation.
Right. It's not just about you talking about yourself. You're inviting the other person to participate.
That's a really great point. So we've covered the vocabulary, different ways to express your interests, and some examples of how to start conversations. But how do you take those initial exchanges and make them more engaging? The material has some tips on that too.
Yeah, it's about going beyond just stating your hobby. The first tip is to provide more detail. Like instead of just saying, I like to read, try mentioning your favorite genres or specific authors.
Or what you're reading right now.
Exactly. That gives the other person much more to work with and respond to.
It's so much more interesting to hear someone say, I'm really into historical fiction right now, especially books set during World War II, than just, I like reading.
Great, you're giving them a hook, something they can latch on to.
And it makes it so much easier to find common ground and keep the conversation going.
Exactly. And the second tip builds on what we saw in that example dialogue. Ask follow-up questions. Show that you're genuinely curious about the other person's hobbies.
That's so important.
It really shifts the dynamic from just exchanging information to actually building a connection. You're showing that you're not just talking about yourself, but that you're truly interested in learning more about the other person.
And the advice about using natural expressions and intonation, that's so important too.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when you're learning a new language. It's not just about the words you use, but how you say them.
You can say the most grammatically perfect sentence, but if you deliver it in a flat monotone, it's not going to have the same impact.
Exactly. You need to convey that enthusiasm through your tone of voice.
And using those natural interjections, things like, wow, that's amazing, or really, I've never heard of that, can make a huge difference.
It makes you sound more like a native speaker.
Yeah, it adds that naturalness to your speech.
And finally, the reminder to practice speaking. Whether it's talking to yourself or chatting with friends, that's absolutely key to improving your fluency and confidence.
No matter how much you read or study, the best way to get better at speaking is to actually speak.
And talking about your hobbies is such a great way to do that.
Because you're already passionate about these things, so it makes the practice more enjoyable and the learning more effective.
So to wrap it all up, it's clear that talking about your hobbies isn't just a pleasant way to spend time. It's a really valuable tool for learning and practicing English.
You're building vocabulary, you're learning to express yourself more naturally, and you're gaining confidence through real-world interactions.
And the resources we've looked at today give you everything you need to get started. Those vocabulary lists, the different ways to talk about your interests, the example conversations, the tips for making your conversations more engaging. It's all there.
It really is a fantastic starting point. And it all comes down to taking these tools and applying them to your own passions.
Absolutely. It's been a really eye-opening deep dive into something that's so core to who we are.
And it makes perfect sense that these personal passions can be such a powerful bridge in learning a new language.
I totally agree.
And it leaves us with a really interesting thought. How might your own unique set of hobbies and interests open up conversations and connections that you haven't even imagined yet?
That's a good one.
Think beyond just language learning. How could sharing your passions enrich your interactions with others and potentially lead to new opportunities in different areas of your life?
That's something for our listeners to ponder. Thanks for this deep dive. It's been fantastic.
My pleasure.
And we'll see everyone next time.
See you then.
Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe.